Hello and welcome to another episode of the podcast where we will reassure you that football is fixable. Alright, Sess.
Alright, Dan.
Alright. You alright, James?
Yeah, not
Good.
too bad.
Good.
That was well rehearsed,
welcome back. that was brilliantly done.
You can tell we're professionals now.
So, we're definitely professional. You're sort of semi-pro, but Sess and I are professional.
Yeah, we've been doing this for a year now. Over a year.
Yeah. I mean, I'm still taking notes. I'm learning from, obviously, the best. And then ignoring James.
Exactly.
There you go, Sess. Can I say, though, so before we get into our new episode, our previous episode, right, which was fixing... What
the
were we
Premier
fixing?
League.
The Premier League.
Das
that was
Premier Liga.
Fixing
or
that.
whatever it is.
Exactly. And we
What was that?
It was my attempt at some kind of hybrid German. I'm so sorry if I've offended anyone.
It was like Spanish or something. It was some sort of Hispanic sounding thing. But so we're fixing the Premier League, and I thought it was a really good episode. Don't you agree?
Well, yeah, as all of our episodes are.
Yes.
Well, absolutely. But since that episode, I've come up with an absolutely genius fix that I think I need to mention.
Oh, okay.
Does it
Well,
count?
you're building up to be a good one.
Does it count if it's outside?
This is literally...
That's a bit...
I can't fix football in... we can't compartmentalise these things. We are fixing football, and that's an endless, ongoing challenge. So
That's true. That's fair enough.
Well,
I'll
yeah. Otherwise, we'd be out of the job.
Yeah, I'll just make a note of this for future. If there's any things that I feel like I haven't come back with, I'm going to have notes with comebacks and things, and I'll just bring them up about 4 or 5 episodes later.
Yeah, that's allowed. Yeah.
For the good of football. We'll make let's make a 1 episode rule, yeah? You can go back once.
I like it. All right, come on then. What's your fix?
Right. Here we go, I'm building it up. So in that episode, we were talking about kind of the soul of football, weren't we? And how the English football's being lost, the kind of fans aren't being cared for and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And as we delve into that topic, we talked about how academy players are quite important and how they kind of relate to the fans and they get the fans buying into the team and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And how the salaries are bringing in these, foreign players who might not care about the clubs as much. So it was all kind of interlinked. Well, my extra fix is to make it a rule to have more homegrown, not just homegrown, but academy players in your squad, and they have to play at least so many minutes per season.
Okay.
So not only, the reason why this is genius and why you guys are going to be, just starstruck by this, awestruck, or in awe, you're going to be in awe
right.
for this, is, one, it's going to lower the wage bill because the academy players, you haven't got to sign players in and often try and tempt them with higher wages.
But homegrown already exists, doesn't it?
Yeah, the homegrown thing, but I mean academy, so actually your own academy. It's great because it gets you to focus on your academy instead of buying just this homegrown thing's a bit of a open, broad, you can buy
like a
player from
15-year-old.
Southampton's academy.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it counts as homegrown. There's all kind of loopholes around it. I'm saying they have to be products of your academy system, so it encourages clubs to invest in their academy systems, which is good for the fans and the community. The players, when they get into the first team, they'll get minutes, so I'm saying there should be a number of, at least so much sort of time they should get playing in the first team in the Premier League, which is going to help fans buy into the team and relate to the team because they represent the club's values and everything.
Uh-huh.
And there was another fix as well. So I'm trying to think now. So what was that? It fixes salary. It fixes fan buy-in. It brings back some soul to the club. It will stop some of the ridiculous spending that we're seeing.
I think this is...
I just thought
doesn't the German league... I'll have to double check actually with our informant, Philip, that don't they do the 6 and 5 rule or something? Where you have to have like 6... Was it homegrown players or maybe national players or something? I can't remember. Wasn't there something
I know
like that?
They have had that, yeah. I wouldn't be surprised based on everything we've been learning about the German game.
Yeah.
If that's still, if that's still in there, because I think that was a big thing. Even in other countries like Spain was it allowed you 2 overseas players you're allowed in the squad for a while, but obviously that's changed now, but that was for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if Germany have kept hold of that, just because, again, we were saying that one thing Germany does well with their football is it does kind of think about the fans and that kind of the soul of football still there kind of thing, the soul of the culture and everything of the nation.
So are you saying that we need to focus more on the academy, basically, which is...
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's similar to what Dan said last week.
I didn't want to say anything, but...
My specific... Dan did... This is the thing. So it's something similar to what Dan was saying. We did... I think all three of us were talking about the academy setup in terms of like players who you want to care about, and then Dan went on a rant about Rashford.
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that bit.
Yeah, what I'm saying is they actually now need a quota of academy players actually in the squad, and they need, not just in the squad, they need to be given at least so many minutes per season playing, like game time essentially.
Okay.
So it's good for our... that's the other fix I was going to mention. It's also going to be good for our national game, for the the England team. We're going to see more English players coming through and getting minutes.
That's true. That's
Cole
the kind
Palmer
of thing...
had to leave Man City to go to Chelsea just to play,
That's true.
I agree with that. Imagine how many, big-time managers would have struggled. People like even Carlo Ancelotti, he never really relied on youth. Quite often he'd have teams that will end up being very aging, like when he left AC Milan, they were all like basically in their 30s. Real Madrid of started aging until he was allowed to buy Bellingham and get Mbappe in and stuff. Mourinho as well, he would struggle.
Not really academy products in many ways, isn't it? It's kind of buying Bellingham in for, he's a big potential superstar, you're buying in
pretty sure that's just
other
what
players.
I said. Isn't that what I just said?
I think
James had to buy in.
James has mastered the art of taking what other people say and just rewording it a little bit, and it's
stamping it with James.
How he comes up with this stuff, actually, we are
crazy, right?
Yeah, we are in the presence of genius.
Well, that's it. The genius is kind of hearing things said and then improving on it. So what I've done is I've taken raw bits of kind of mess and then I've just put it together in more tangible kind of well-worded
You're basically like a thesaurus for ideas.
Yeah, I guess.
Wow.
That academy idea, though, you didn't say that in the previous episode. Our listeners will know that. So anyway, I just built on the kind of topics we were talking about. I don't know if it's because you think about what you mentioned, Ancelotti, Mourinho, Pep. I
did also say Mourinho.
Oh, did you? I didn't hear you say that. Oh, okay. In which case, ignore all that.
How you get these ideas, James?
So good.
I didn't hear you say Mourinho. I heard you say Ancelotti.
I did say Mourinho, didn't I, Dan?
Yeah, you did.
Oh, okay. Well, moving on for sort of more the topic of today, guys. Have you sort of been following the news there's been lots of kind of sort of unfortunate stories, really, sort of abuse and discrimination towards players and refs, and I have to put my own club, Arsenal, in the midst of all this, because
I think you'll have to,
after the Michael Oliver...
Yeah, it's only Arsenal, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I think, we've got other examples as well. I think there's other ones that we can bring in, but most recently we've had the Michael Oliver red card decision against Arsenal when we were playing Wolves the other week, whenever it was, and just before that, Kai Havertz and his family were also being kind of threatened in the abuse they're receiving because Havertz hasn't scored as many goals as people believe he should be, or whatever it is. So, our topic today sort of is looking at kind of abuse, really, isn't it? From like toxicity and that kind of thing.
Yeah. From
fans.
We've reviewed something similar to this, but I think it's become very topical and unfortunately a bit more frequent recently. So I think it's necessary.
Yeah. That's it.
It's clearly a big problem, and we're here to fix things. So why not try and fix the biggest problems?
Exactly.
So
Arsenal.
Exactly.
No.
Fixing Arsenal.
Let's fix. Be quiet, Dan. Let's fix toxic fans again. Right. So firstly, then, guys, what are your kind of thoughts on kind of abuse and toxicity in football? We talked about this last season, didn't we, Sess, in our first season?
That's a good point.
And it seems like we need to fix it again. What keeps happening?
Dan, what's your thoughts? Because James and I, we thought we'd fixed it. We thought it was a thing of the past, but it's come back. So what do you think?
I think there's a lot of frustration and a lot of aggression in fan bases across the country now. And I think it's a lot of misplaced frustration. I mean, you look at what's happening with Michael Oliver, and it's just not acceptable, really. You know, the fact that people going,
No, it's shameful.
they're going to his house and bringing the family into it and stuff. These are people that have got nothing to do with anything that's happened. I mean, yeah, we're all very passionate about the game, but it is just a game, and there are, you know, matters that are more important. And when you're going to someone's house and threatening them, and also they're obviously putting their families in quite dangerous situations, it's not really acceptable, is it?
No, it's not.
I do feel like there is, like you alluded to, Sess, it's getting worse. I do think there is an element to that where the divide between the fans and the clubs and those with money and without is getting greater, and that really feeds that aggression, and then that anger is just misplaced in all which ways. And I think those are the things that really need to be addressed. But it's just not, no matter what the reasoning is or no matter what the feeling is, it's never acceptable to be acting that way.
Yeah, and it's something
Absolutely.
that I mentioned in our previous episode about toxic fans, that it's something you don't see in other sports. It's just bizarre. It's accepted to have aggressive fans in football.
Yeah.
And it's accepted that most teams will actually have, you know, like the ultras. They even have names for them now, and certain stadium areas that they're assigned, and they're allowed to be the ultras there.
Yeah, so true.
Yeah. The whole thing about going into a pub of any rival teams, it's not just a jokey, haha, you can't come in here. It's a legitimate, you come in here and it's actually dangerous. You know? That's accepted.
That's a very good point.
It's such a good point.
Yeah, it's very bizarre.
Yeah. So just to give this kind of what we're talking about, that kind of clear kind of meaning in a sense. So what's happened, so Michael Oliver, for that example, so police have been investigating the threats and abuse directed at referee Michael Oliver following the Arsenal game against Wolves when he gave that red card. Whether you agree with that decision or not, this is what followed. So quotes here from the PGMOL, who have come out and said that no official should be subject to any form of abuse, let alone the abhorrent attacks aimed at Michael and his family over the past 24 hours. Apparently, they've been around his house, and he's kind of at the stage where he almost feels like he shouldn't leave his house. I saw an article earlier. So
that's crazy.
There's a number of investigations.
Horrible.
So it's come from, this is across a national level, if not global,
One
because
thing
of the impact of the teams
Sorry
involved.
to interrupt, James. One thing I would say to that, though, I do think that I don't think this is all on the fans. I do think the PGMOL have a responsibility as well in the way that they act to help control these situations. When decisions are made, and Michael Oliver is human, he can make mistakes, decisions can be made, and mistakes can be made. And when frustration levels are as high as they are, and when mistakes are as obvious as they are, I think they need addressing. I think that obviously not in the way that people have now taken it into their own hands, and I think what's happened is where the PGMOL haven't acted, I don't think, in the correct way. They've, if anything, fueled the aggression and fueled the conflict in the situation by backing the decision. Then that's then caused people to feel like they need to take it into their own hands, and has actually elevated this level of aggression towards Michael Oliver, when actually their frustration is really more to do with how everything has been handled. But it's directed.
It's that misplaced idea that you mentioned, wasn't it?
Yeah, but unfortunately, it's directed at Michael Oliver, but because people have this need to associate error with something or someone, like an entity, and the PGMOL is not. It's a very broad, elusive kind of thing you don't see, Whereas Michael Oliver, I think, is kind of like the guy on the customer service front desk that is just passing on a message. He's just doing his job on behalf of a company that you don't agree with, but you're going to have a go at the guy on the other end of the phone. You're not going to have a go at the company that you're dealing with, if you see what I mean. So I just feel like the PGMOL also need to take responsibility rather than, in fact, creating further divide. I think they need to say, look, we apologise, we haven't handled this correctly or whatever, and they need to take some responsibility rather than, because there doesn't seem to be any responsibility from any of these sort of establishments within football. I mean,
well, the issue I have with this, I kind of agree with you that there's some sort of like almost like a wall that they put up, I suppose, and they kind of say nope, that's it, and hold people at arm's length.
yeah.
However, the whole idea of the misplaced aggression, I kind of don't agree with that, and I don't say this lightly because normally I like to disagree with James, and I agree with everything you say, Dan.
You two are two peas in a pod. What's going on?
This hurts me. But I kind of don't agree with it, purely because, and this is the perspective of someone who doesn't just watch football as well, I just don't agree with it, because whether it's misplaced towards Michael Oliver or Kai Havertz or anything, there's still aggression there, and there shouldn't be in the first place. I think the idea is that if they're misplaced, if they're going as far as going to one of their houses and sending death threats to families, etc., the problem is those people and how they're allowed to do these things. I said it before, in football, people have this idea that they're allowed to complain about the issues. In any other sport, the rules are made, you follow the rules, you might not like it, but you move on. Whereas in football, there's this idea, we can keep complaining, and we have a voice. And you can see it with the players, they're still surrounding the referee. The manager then joins in. All of the coaches, you can see the coaches nowadays, they go right up to the line and start shouting. The fans around in the stadium can do it, then everyone at home can do it. And we were talking about kids at school at the age of 5 years old, the parents will shout at the 13-year-old referees. I think this is the actual problem. I don't think it matters whether it's misplaced or not. I don't think the aggression should be there in the first place.
I'm sort of stuck in the middle because I agree with both. I think there is a kind of wider societal issue, and particularly when it comes to football, there's kind of how people can kind of feel they can get away with it with football, whereas maybe some other sports, maybe because of the infrastructure around other sports, the way
I think
the kind of agreement with the refs and the processes and the rules and things might be factors as well. But football is, it's, and you could say this, but I'm sure Sessa say, well, this is the same for all sport, but football is very deeply emotional, right?
Yeah.
And some may say it's more tribal than maybe some other sports.
It's definitely more tribal.
People like to take things emotionally. Yeah, maybe perhaps more tribal. But one thing I do agree with Dan on, the PGMOL, I think, is still partly the problem. And the thing is, what they are, they're kind of this elusive, all-powerful entity, aren't they? They make all these decisions. No one has any say, really. And the thing is, when they make these decisions in a game, so Michael Oliver sent an Arsenal player off the other day, and then that for the whole game, that's us down to 10 men kind of thing. So there's no, even if they come out and apologise afterwards, which they haven't, like Dan said, they've doubled down and kind of said no, it was the right decision, even though pretty much every direction is people calling pundits and different media organisations saying that's a crazy decision.
Yeah,
they've just backed Michael Oliver. And it just seems like they're kind of this us in them kind of thing. They're not trying to build bridges too much. I thought, Howard Webb was doing a good job.
Yeah, it's definitely wrong what they did. However, the problem is, we've seen the PGMOL change. However slowly it has been, however much we kind of think actually it's gone backwards a little bit when it comes to refereeing, we have seen changes being made. We've seen changes to, the handball rule, VAR being brought in, all these different things that they are changing, but they're not going to change these things based on how many death threats refs get.
No, that's true.
They change things based on the kind of conversations that pundits have, the kind of uproar that there is without violence. That violence bit, that's the bit that I don't think it matters how much the PGMOL might be stoking things up. They have the right. They have the absolute authority to say what's right and what's wrong. And however wrong that decision was, if they say they're sticking with it, they're right. And that's the thing about football compared to other sports.
Well, the thing is with football, though, compared to other sports, like, you also need to think about class, I think, in this a bit. Like, football, like, the level of following that football has and the people that follow it, like, it is very much a working class man's game, right? So you're
or woman.
Sorry, of course, a working class person's game. I know you talk about other sports, but like you look at the people that follow golf, that follow tennis, that follow rugby, that follow this, they're of a different background. They're of a different upbringing, different for me personally. So maybe I'm talking from a personal perspective here, which is why I feel quite maybe a bit more protective. I feel like when I say about misplaced aggression, I don't think I'm just saying that there should be I'm kind of getting at is these people, football is their outlet, football is their escape, football is their vice. Their lives may be incredibly difficult, and when football is their escape, when it doesn't go how they want it to go, that's when all this violence infuses, because there are real issues somewhere else. And when they have this escape for themselves once a week, if it goes badly, you can see there's real problems. And so I'm not excusing it. What I'm saying is we need to understand the audience in order to be able to make the correct decisions. As not we, but the ones that running the game need to understand their audience in order to make the correct decisions to minimize the risk of these situations happening.
Yeah, it's similar to wearing flammable clothes in a house on fire. You're expecting to catch on fire.
Yeah.
But I kind of feel as though the house shouldn't be on fire in the first place. If we're fixing something, the reason why I talk about how the PGMOL, whatever they say, they're right, they're not right in terms of, clearly they made the wrong decision with the Michael Oliver thing, but I think because we're still treating football fans as these sensitive people, how much more would the PGMOL have to keep doing? Because what they're doing is they're still allowing this aggression in the first place. When we talked about toxic fans in last season, I mentioned how it goes from grassroots. So if there's no respect from parents watching their kids play football and screaming at the teenage ref, and if there's no respect in Sunday League football like we've all experienced, of course there's going to be no respect in the professional football. And then every child, every adult that watches professional football, they will think it's fine.
And when you see the players as well, these are role models for us. We said this in our episode last season as well. The players are kind of like, they lead us and they set the example, don't they, in the tone. So if they're the way we see them answering back to refs, the fans
they'll mimic
just see it and follow suit.
Because when we were growing up, we had people like Roy Keane and Vieira to look up to, and yet it's unthinkable now, isn't it? Like, if any player was half the aggression of Keane or Vieira now, we would think that's abhorrent.
Yeah.
And yet even now, we still have players surrounding referees. They've had to bring in a rule that you'll get a yellow card if you surround the referee, and they've even had to stop that, and they just allow it.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean. It's just all this
this
culture of it's the culture of constantly allowing things to happen all the time. And I just think if we allow people to make these decisions, like in football, you allow people to be aggressive, you allow the players, the managers, the coaches, all to be aggressive, the fans will be aggressive.
One particular thing which is riling, I don't think it's a working class element specifically, although that's obviously underpinning an element of the fan base, no doubt, of any team, including Arsenal fans. But this Michael Oliver situation, I think, has been brewing for a while, so there's a bit of context needed here, I think. We're hearing about the extreme examples, aren't we? We're seeing this in the news. It's possibly fueled by social media. That's partly the problem as well as the PGMOL and the other things we talked about. Social media has given them a channel to be able to throw this stuff out there and not really answer for it. So and it's getting frontline news as well, because it gets spread, goes viral. But there is a bit of context as well to this, and that is that Michael Oliver's relationship with Arsenal, there's all sorts of, again, this is going to be fueled by social media, the kind of conspiracy theories about how referees favour some teams over others. And so, I mean, statistically, they are something that you'd look at and go, wow, that's interesting. But to think that that's a conspiracy theory, to think that he's corrupt and that he's favouring, I do think he's one of our best refs. Michael Oliver. Yeah. It was a mistake. He made a mistake. I believe an issue also lies with VAR, which we kind of touched on a bit as well, the system and the rules. Statistically, Michael Oliver sent 8 Arsenal players off in 55 games. So every single team that he's refereed 40 plus games of, no one comes close to that.
Yeah.
Although saying that, there is Everton and Spurs who he sent off 5 players off, actually. So they're the closest. He's refereed 50 games for Man City and not sent anyone off. and he's refereed 57 games of Liverpool, and he sent one player off. So you can look at these stats and think, oh, well, that means something.
Yeah.
You know, but that's taken out of context. You have to look at those games. Yes, mistakes can be made. Rice was sent off earlier in the season, but that wasn't Michael Oliver.
That's true.
I've heard that been mentioned across.
It's almost like
recent,
Oliver's been blamed for it. Yeah.
He's been blamed for it. Yeah, that's what I mean. That's been mentioned as well. Well, this season, and that kind of gets added into it as well. So people, linking to what both of you are saying, I think partly what Dan was saying about people are wanting to fight, in a sense, that it's kind of like that tribal us and them culture.
Yeah.
We're kind of like, we need to stick up for our own. But I do think it's a minority of idiots, and they need to be called out. There was the recent Kai Havertz situation as well, because he wasn't scoring enough goals, which is weird, because when he scored quite recently, he's already matched his tally from last season, and he's still got 21-something games to go, or whatever it is. So, but a 17-year-old has been arrested by the police for that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a 17-year-old. He, maybe you could say he's young and that kind of stuff, but we need to be educating people on how they should be treated. It's a societal issue as much as anything, surely.
Well, I mean, that's the thing about conspiracy theorists, though. They all look at stats to favour their view. And these people are ones that already thought that there'd be a conspiracy, and then they look at the stats, like, the whole Michael Oliver red card thing, and think, well, there we go, that's justified my decision. Even though, if you think about those stats, there's got to be a worse team for Michael Oliver. It doesn't have to be Arsenal. However good a referee you are, there's going to be one team where you give the most red cards. You can't imagine a referee giving the same number of red cards to every team.
Yeah.
However, if you're of the mind that there's some sort of referee conspiracy against Arsenal, and then you look at that stat, you go, boom, that's justified it.
Yeah, that's such a good point. If everyone did have the same number of cards, that would be worth investigating.
That is a conspiracy, Yeah,
that would be a conspiracy that I'd probably want to know more about.
Yeah,
what's going on there?
Yeah, exactly.
So I think, though, like, also maybe playing devil's advocate a little bit, I think fans do have a right to voice their frustrations. I think
agree,
there is, because fans are passionate, and the passion in football is not something we want to lose. So I do think there are maybe ways in which to vent your frustrations and to voice your opinions that aren't toxic and horrendous.
Yeah, that's fair.
No, I agree. I just think it could be, and that's the thing, I'm not offended if someone boos or whatever, but in the sense that it might be the gateway to something worse. It starts the flame, it might only be a small flame, but suddenly that, when you've got 60,000 people in a stadium, those boos suddenly, like that Mexican wave, it starts spreading, and so then the insults come, and then something else. So that's where boos aren't the problem themselves, but I just think it can sometimes give people that negative mindset. But anyway, should we go on to the fixes then, lads?
Let's do it.
Right, well, I'll start then. So my first fix is around social media, and this is a wider sort of societal issue.
Okay.
So in terms of social media, organisations need to manage what's allowed. So something we're doing, so across our socials, for example, we're making regular posts and engaging with our audience. We get lots of questions and things I see on like our TikTok page and Instagram and things like that. And when I post something, it goes through like an automated check. So sometimes it's for the sound and things like that, but if it's offensive in any way, it can be reported and that sort of stuff.
Oh, okay.
There needs to be algorithms that pick up any form of abuse. How is this getting through to the likes of Michael Oliver and Kai Havertz and stuff?
Yeah.
If it's in the stadium with Xerxes, that's a separate thing we need to look at. But the social media aspect and how that's enabling this stuff to happen, there needs to be, especially with AI now, there needs to be more.
That's true. Yeah.
Specific checks put in place. There has
to be. There has
although
to be
I'm not,
ways to do it.
I'm not a technician, but one of my fixes is to recommend that the kind of social media technicians need to be I mean, we were blocked on YouTube once because we posted a few things because of the music and the copyright and stuff, and it copyright blocked us for a bit, and then we appealed, and then they realised that there was actually nothing wrong with it. But if that's capable of happening, then any post, any form of abuse, there should be anything you type in needs to be read before it's allowed to be made public.
Yeah, I agree with that. Well, shall I go with my point?
Yeah.
So my first point is going to be that I'm going to do a two-prong attack here. I'm going to start off with the point that I've made before, and I shall make again this season, is respect from grassroots. I think it's going to take a while, because it's going to take a generation of people growing up in order for things to change. However, I think it needs to happen, and it needs to happen now. Because if we don't start it now, then you're going to wait for another generation for this to happen. Right from grassroots, you have to stop abuse when it comes to, like I said before, parents shouting at teenage referees.
Yeah.
You need to call them out. Teachers need to call them out, need to ban those parents doing that. When it comes to the academy football or Sunday league, anything like that, absolutely no abuse. You remember when we played Sunday league? That was mental. I'm surprised anyone wanted to be a ref in Sunday league. I don't understand what kind of mentality you have to take this abuse for 25 quid a game or whatever.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it? Right then, should I do my second one?
Yeah,
then?
go for it.
So, well, for my second fix, guys, I'm looking at how all of us use stats. Now, this has been something we've talked about in previous episodes anyway, using stats with kind of context. And you need to be, in a way, you need to be trained. Some of the experiences I have with the students that I teach is trying to train them how to use statistics, because they're really helpful stats. They help us see things in a more simplified way. It gives us an understanding of what's happening around us, whatever it is they're focused on, right?
Yeah.
So, like I was talking about Michael Oliver's stats against different clubs and how many red cards he's given and stuff like that. All that is a stat. That doesn't give any meaning or reasons. It takes out. It doesn't tell you why those red cards were given. You can just see how many stats were given per. How many red cards were given per game, how that averages, how many tackles he's awarded, fouls and all that kind of stuff. That you can try and attach something to that if you want, but that is a very risky thing to do, and that's where the conspiracy seemed to come from, like we mentioned earlier.
You could change the narrative right away, couldn't you? Like, you've already got that. Sort of the stereotypical story, which is that Arsenal are masters of the dark arts, and you could say that look at all of the red cards that they get because they are, they toe the line of the rules, and you could change the narrative straight away, give the same stat, and it supports that. So
yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, it literally
Absolutely.
just, you can change the story straight away and then just pick a number and then there you go.
Well, so on these stats, so there's a whole table comparison the top sides, like I mentioned the stats earlier, for red cards against teams that Michael Oliver's refereed more than 40 times. And then it even puts in there red cards per game, so it gives you the decimal. So Liverpool, that one red card in 57 games comes at 0.02. So you can look at that, and then you compare it to Arsenal's, where's Arsenal? So 0.15 per game, so 0.15. So a 15% chance, essentially, per game of getting a red card from Michael Oliver. That's the highest out of all of the other stats there. And suddenly you might go, oh, that means then. And people attach a meaning to that as if it's, oh, he's clearly anti-Arsenal or he's corrupt. He's, there's news reports because he refereed a game over in the Middle East somewhere during pre-season and he was paid quite a lot of money for it. And people attach, oh, that must mean that he's on the payroll of Man City or, you know what I mean? Where's the evidence for this? You're attacking someone's integrity. I don't believe, that Michael Oliver sent Miles Lewis-Skelly off because he felt, oh, I don't want Arsenal to win the league, or I'm anti-Arsenal, whatever it was. It was a mistake. It was a poor decision. There's wider issues like we talked about, how, VAR didn't correct it and stuff. But he needs help. So we all like to use stats. They give us a kind of understanding, but don't jump to conclusions. Don't automatically associate wrongdoing because of a statistic. So we need to be more mindful, generally speaking, of how we use stats.
Stats, numbers are a very neutral thing, aren't they? And the most dangerous thing you can do is take a stat and apply it to something that is incredibly emotional. And the combination...
Yeah. Such as football.
Well, or this particular topic, the combination of the aggression and the emotion that is felt at the time, and then to associate just a statistic, a number to it that doesn't mean anything, but then it kind of gives something a real validation because it's a number, is a very dangerous thing.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We said on our Fixing Statistics episode, please go and listen to that because we go into a lot more detail on how we use stats. But one particular conclusion was, don't come out with your hypothesis, your theory, your conspiracy, and then use the stats to back it up. You should look at the stats independently. You need to look at them in the context of themselves. What are they measuring? What are they looking at? And then interpret it from there. Don't have a theory in your head where you're looking to... It's almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly, yeah.
Where you already decided what the answer is, and then you pick and choose what stats you want to try and justify your conclusion.
Yeah. Stats are basically ingredients, aren't they?
Yeah.
And you have to be... The better you are as a cook, the better you can use the ingredients that you're given.
Absolutely.
But a lot of people, I think, they haven't been trained in any way to look at statistics, so they kind of think, well, if I put more sugar in, it's better because I like sugar, and so they start putting sugar in shepherd's pie.
That's a good analogy, Seth. I really enjoyed that. That was very good.
Thanks very much. Yeah.
That's brilliant.
I feel like that's going to go viral.
And it also explains why I have beans on toast several times a week.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. God, you use stats so badly, James. My second point is, I mentioned grassroots before, however that's kind of starting bottom up, but I'm going to go top down this time. And I did mention this before, but I'll go into it more detail. It's the idea that players can do what they want. They tried to bring in these rules, the whole yellow card if you hassle the referee. They started that last season, and all three of us know, and everyone who watches football knows, that's pretty much gone now. You might get it every now and again, really rarely, but you still see hassling. We saw the game Arsenal-Wolves last week, James, and immediately I was saying, wasn't I, they should get yellow cards there. That should be yellow card.
Yeah, it's just every time I'm sat watching a game of football with you, it's like book, yellow,
exactly.
Anyone who approaches, and I completely agree with you.
And I think because of that, players are still allowed to do what they want. Maybe not to the extent that, I remember Roy Keane literally chasing after a referee and going right up to his face. Yeah. But you still see referees being basically pushed. They have their shirts tugged. That's not allowed. I think that's a red card offence. When you actually lay your hands on the ref, but I still see that.
Yeah.
The managers, same kind of thing. They're allowed to. Nothing happens when they walk out of that little box that they're supposed to be in. They don't even have to follow that. They can, even if they think, well, I can't say what I want to the referee, so instead I'll swear and shout at the fourth ref. Well, that shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah. I've never understood it. I've never understood why anyone's able to do that.
Yeah,
and the fourth ref can't do anything anyway. I just think if I'm that fourth ref, why are you telling me I can't do anything?
Yeah, might as well shout at the water boy or something. It's just ridiculous. And if you can have the players and the managers doing that, and like I say, the coaches nowadays are getting involved as well, doing that as well, and they can say what they want. To an extent, they're kind of curtailed when it comes to media. They can't say certain things about the ref. Too late. By then, most people watch the 90 minutes and they're influenced by the 90 minutes, not the interview after the game. So I think that we have to clamp it down hard when it comes to any kind of bad behaviour that the players or managers make. Because I've always said the referee, the one person that should have ultimate respect is the referee. Whatever the referee says, go with it, because they're literally the decision makers. And so if you show disrespect to the decision maker, then you're teaching all the fans you can argue all you want.
I agree with what you're saying, Seth. The reference on the pitch is there, but I do think that there is definitely a need to address the level of officiating in football. There needs to be an acknowledgement that it needs to be better.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And we've made episodes and we've said it over and over again that the refereeing standards are terrible. And they've gone down and down over the years. However, even if you look at cricket, we think of cricket as more of an upper class kind of boring, whatever. But we see it as sitting down. Oh yes, well done, clap, clap, clap. If you think about India, it's the biggest sport in India. There's literally 1 billion people watch cricket, and the majority of them are working class, but they don't have the kind of aggression that football has. The fact that in cricket it's not to do with working class or upper class or anything like that, it's more to do with people accept that the umpires and the decision makers have the respect. What they say is correct.
Even if they make a mistake, they need, you need to accept that they're the authority. You have to do what they
I
say.
mean, it's hard.
Exactly.
It's hard for me to comment on the level of officiating in other sports that I'm not as attached to. But from watching cricket, from watching rugby, because obviously I do still watch all sports, it does feel like the level of officiating is a lot higher. I don't often watch those.
Yeah.
I don't often watch cricket or watch rugby and think, oh, the referees had a nightmare or the umpires had a nightmare. It does seem to be a lot higher. So that does also help.
Yeah. I think that's actually connected to, James made a point about it when we did an episode on the refs, that if we treat refs so badly, how many people are going to grow up wanting to be refs? So already the talent pool is going to be so low.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For once, you made a good point.
James, can we just make a note here? Do you see how when Cess repeated an idea that you came up with, he gave you the credit for that idea that he repeated? Can we just make a note for that for future, James? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, make a note because I got something right.
No. I mean, that is an amazing point. But
yeah, it was a good point.
Yeah.
So well done. But
well, I've duly noted that as well anyway. Right, so building a bit on what Dan was saying earlier around PGMOL, I do think there is still an issue there. We can accept that the rules, the refs, the VAR issues, that's something which, again, we fixed on previous episodes and we'll be looking at in future as well. The processes need to improve. But one thing with the PGMOL, I think, could improve, more generally speaking, is it needs to be more in touch with fans. And I've been thinking about different ways that can happen. Some have already been spoken about and reported, and things that have been experimenting with. I think the Carabao Cup, for example, where the refs actually are mic'd up to the stadium, so you can hear them explain what's going on.
Yeah, like
to
in
the
American
refs or the
football.
fans in the stadium.
Yeah,
and that's it. And I think more of that approach, where there's more kind of link to the ref and you can see what's going on. Similar to that, I think post-match interviews where the refs come out and they try and explain, even if it was mistakes and what the reason I made that decision. And that's not to come in sort of, I'm so sorry I got it wrong. It's just, at the time, this was what happened, da-da-da-da-da. And it just makes the fans kind of hopefully see the more human element of this. That, whether it's a right decision or wrong decision, the refs, or even if it's just a weekly, they get you turn it into a TV show, an entertainment show, whatever it is, and the refs come on as guests, but they become more relatable to fans, and you see them not as the enemy and just this establishment that's against you all the time. You can relate to them a bit more, and I think that's something which could help the PGMOL.
Yeah, makes sense.
And one more thing, maybe in the off-season, in the summer and that sort of stuff as well, I think they could do more, the PGMOL, to meet fan bases. To actually, I know they meet with clubs, but more involvement in kind of contacting fans, working through clubs to speak to fans and seeing what fans would like to be more involved with. I'm sure they do some of this, but these are just different suggestions I've been thinking about to get the PGMOL as more of a kind of relatable institution that works with fans rather than against them.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
They're good decisions. The problem is it still comes back to this idea that the football fans have a say in it. I just think it's wrong, probably because I watch a lot of other sports, and in no way will fans of even boxing. Boxing's one of the most aggressive sports. Literally, it's an aggressive sport. That's the whole idea of it. And yet
they're fighting.
Yeah, and yet I can't see the fans having the influence that football fans want, or that we're proposing to give to them. I just think the whole idea of giving them the voice is, I don't know. I just think, especially now, when they're already sending death threats and stuff, it's kind of almost rewarding them, saying, you know what, we'll let you have your say because you've been aggressive.
I get what you're saying.
Well,
but
that's I was saying
Sorry.
that it's not influence, it's the... Sorry, I was just because I wasn't saying about fans having any influence, but just being informed, so they're just aware of why decisions are made, not, oh, what do you think, should I not have given it, kind of thing.
Okay.
Not fans should just do what they're told in terms of they're passive, they're supporters, they're, what's the word I'm looking for? They're viewers, they're the audience, they're not part of the game in that sense directly.
Okay.
So, but to be informed of what's going on, the issue of not hearing when VAR's in a stadium is a problem because fans just stood there waiting for things.
Yeah, we've always said that,
respect
haven't we?
towards the fan. Yeah, so I think it's just more of a communication error more than anything. It's not. I don't want fans to have a say.
Fair enough.
But I think they should just be informed in that sense. So I do agree with you. They shouldn't have.
So I agree with you to an extent, Cess, but I think that's the end goal. I think that's the end game. I think that the culture has got to such a point of us and them that bridges need to be built in order to be able to move forward. So, like, yes, you're right. There shouldn't be any sort of having to pander to this or that. It's what the referee says and that's it. But in reality, because of where those levels are at the minute, I think there needs to be some kind of work to kind of bridge the gap, the discord between the PGMOL and fans, to be able to get to a point where we can get to that situation where it is the case where we can
trust their
exactly.
authority.
I think there needs to be a period of repair, if you see what I mean, and then we can get to the end game, which is what you're saying, which is referee says that's what it is, and then there's no pandering.
I see what you mean. Right, my last point then is going to be to do with repercussions on the clubs based on the fans' reactions. So, for example, what happened with Michael Oliver and Kai Havertz, if you can actually track back and 100% definitively prove that they are the supporter of a certain club, then I think the club should then be punished. Whereas at the moment, whenever you have like a fan being aggressive in the stadium, they're like, right, that's it, you're banned for a year. As though that matters.
As if that's really going to have an impact.
Yeah, exactly. However, if you're told, right, this guy who threatened the life of Michael Oliver, we can definitively 100% prove he's an Arsenal fan, in which case Arsenal will be deducted 3 points, or maybe the game that they just had is a default loss, something like that, so that it basically means that the club is punished to the point that the fans will not want to react in that way.
It's very bold of you.
They may feel it.
That's very strong approach there.
The one thing I'd say is, how would you definitively prove? Because if that was the case, could you not have
I was thinking the same,
imposters? Could you have people that wanted to impersonate Arsenal
Put
fans
on a
to cost
rival
them,
shirt?
To cost them points.
Well, that's why I say definitively prove. So, for example, I can 100% definitively prove that James is an Arsenal fan. Yeah, exactly. You literally only have to look at his flat to realise that it's some sort of Arsenal memorabilia collection.
House visits,
photographs on social media.
House
visits. Yeah,
you don't have bed sheets.
I'm sure.
No, you're not a fan. It's okay.
But so bed sheets. That's what we're looking for, is it?
No, Arsenal bed sheets.
Arsenal bed sheets. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. So you go to whoever's done this 17-year-old who's thrown abuse at Kai Havertz. You just have to go to his house and he's got Arsenal bed sheets. So there we go.
Yeah, I mean,
it was a joke, James.
It's a bit of a joke, but
it was a Christmas
he's all of a
joke.
sudden defensive now because it's Arsenal.
No, but I'm kind of with Dan in the sense that it's quite hard to, like you say, definitively prove, isn't it?
But
also,
I think easy
points
to
deduction sounds extreme in terms of, because that's every other fan is punished because of a minority.
No. So it's easy to definitively prove, but I think it's not easy to be able to get to that point. So I think a lot of people can try to fake it, but I think it's pretty easy to definitively prove. So most people have social media. If they have an Arsenal shirt from many years ago, then automatically you can think, well, he's an Arsenal fan, obviously. Whereas if you don't have social media, then it's more difficult. But I think it's quite easy to definitively prove a player being, a season ticket holder, for example, they're not going to spend all that money just so they can send a yeah, exactly. And I think the repercussions have to be extreme because with
they are quite extreme.
Well, like with players, for example, quite often whenever they do something bad. In the past, you remember when Rivaldo did that dive in the 2006 World Cup at the qualifier?
Yeah.
That's the one,
against Turkey.
He got fined £6,000. What is that going to teach him? That's absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
There's zero repercussions. However, if you're told, by the way, if you dive, you're going to get a 3-match ban, he would not dive.
Exactly. I think the answer is actually more banning. I do agree with you. The repercussions should be stronger. I think having games where, and you've seen it before with games in the past when there's been extreme fan issues where you have to go and play a game behind closed doors, so the other team are allowed fans and you're not, so you lose that advantage. So I think I would, if it was me, I think it's a really good suggestion. I would just tweak, if it was me implementing it. I'm going to take your idea and improve on it. So make it where the fans are banned rather than Can
I just acknowledge James's development there? He's acknowledged taking an idea and improving on it. That's growth, and I'm all for it, James. Well done.
Yeah.
So that shows we can learn. That shows we can learn, and that's the thing.
With the threat of banning,
Well, I think the threat. I mean, it's a deterrent. We do need deterrence as well as we need to be proactive to try and fix it before it happens. But also having deterrence is sometimes really important. So having a ban, I mean, it's punishing all fans, but at least it's a shorter term. If suddenly Arsenal were deducted 3 points, the team that I love and all that, I haven't done anything wrong, but I'm being punished too. So there's a sense of injustice there. If the fans are banned for a match, it's less severe, but it still sends a big message. So I think I'd be more in that kind of area.
Yeah, to a point, but I don't think that'll do anything. I mentioned before in the Toxic Fans episode that a lot of fans might only go and see one game in their whole life. And so if you ban them for life, it makes no difference at all.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
Many people don't actually watch go to the stadium over and over in their lives. So banning, I don't think means anything at all. I don't think it'll change their attitudes or anything at all. But if they're so passionate about their club that they're willing to send death threats to certain people, and then they find out that very action could cause the club 3 points, I would say that's a much better deterrent than just to say that's it, you're no longer allowed to go to a game.
It would be a stronger deterrent, no doubt.
Yeah.
I agree.
I don't think it'll ever. It'll never happen. I'm just putting it out there. It'll never happen. But I'm very extreme when it comes to stopping aggression because it's such a huge thing about football that I hate.
It's a poison. It's a toxic cancer of the game. It's horrible.
Yeah, exactly.
It does need to stop. So sometimes I can see why you're looking at it from that extreme way. Well, on that point, to all listeners, let us know if you agree with Cess or myself on that idea. Should we be more extreme and deduct points from teams, or should we ban fan bases from stadiums for periods of time because of abuse and toxicity from the fan base? Let us know and we'll call the best sort of suggestions out, and obviously if I win I'll call it out, and if I lose then we won't.
Fair enough. You decide.
I will decide.
It's nice to know. It's nice to know, James, where you sit me in this whole establishment. We're going to address.
Sorry, who are you?
You're going to address the listeners' opinions before asking me for mine. I get that. You'd rather.
Yeah, Dan, can you move out the way, please, so I can ask someone else?
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Well, I just naturally assumed because you and Cessa literally hold hands through these episodes. I'm the third wheel, so I just naturally assumed you'll be on your partner's side.
For once, I disagreed with Dan.
Yeah, we did.
You did actually. Yeah. Did you stop holding hands?
No, no. We carried on down.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah, we disagreed together.
Yeah, amicably.
Yeah, exactly.
On that though, Dan. Do you have a certain sort of approach to it? How would you approach it if fans are of a certain club being abusive or toxic in any way? How would you approach it? Are you in the kind of more extreme side?
Well, why? Thank you for asking my opinion, James. I have to say, that, I mean, with all of your points and all of your fixes, I liked all of them. I think there's a lot of obviously some are more extreme than others, some not so realistic. I really quite like James's idea of bringing the refs out a bit more to have an association with them, to have more coverage so they can explain and sort of humanise them a bit more and build that connection.
Boo. You get the joke because we're saying booing could stoke flames.
I love how you had to explain that.
There's a silver lining to this for you, Cess. So the connection thing, right? I am actually still in my head. I'm still impacted by our chat last week about German football. So in this whole connection thing, I wonder if maybe you could speak with your man on the inside of German football.
Ah, Philip.
Yeah, if you could.
Our informant.
And just I'll find out if there's any such issues in the German game where the fans are more connected to their teams. Because I feel like...
That is a very good one.
Yeah.
I feel like if there's more of a connection, where the fans feel more connected to the game, if there's more of a connection with the clubs, with the game itself, I actually feel like a lot of this issue would probably be hugely minimised.
Yeah, I'll find out from Philip.
Yeah, it'd be good. Be good to know. Right then, James. So now we've come to the part of the show that no one is waiting for. It's time for James's Juiceless Tips.
Whoa, wait. I'm James.
Juiceless.
Total rubbish.
Can I say I have successfully ruined Newcastle? I mean, I've put Hall, Gordon and Isak in the last couple of weeks, and I mean, they've started losing games now, which is quite fun. Sorry, Newcastle.
That's fantastic.
Oh, one other thing. We've got the assistant managerships have been unearthed, started. What's the word I'm looking for, Dan?
Unearthed.
Introduced. That's the word. So they've been introduced, but there's stuff to think about with this. So I had Moisey in. I put David Moyes in before this weekend, so he's already got me 12 points at the time of recording. So they get you points for winning, draws, or obviously if you lose, you don't get many points if that manager's team gets any of those results. But there's a few things to think about. So you have to buy your manager with the existing budget you have. I think 500,000 upwards or something for each manager or something like that. And if you've already got 3 players from a team, say Liverpool for example, I think it stops you having Arne Slot as a 4th player. I think these are real juiceless tips because I can't tell you for certain. Nice and juiceless for you all. There you go.
Thanks very much for those juiceless tips, James. Let's hope no one heeds those words.
Please don't.
Thanks, guys. I do appreciate your support and everything. Well, I thought we had some good fixes there, guys. What do you reckon? Some short and long-term ones from Cess talking about the whole grassroots issue, but also there's more immediate ones as well that we talked about. So, what do you reckon?
Yeah.
I reckon we've done pretty well there. It's
all in a good day's work, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. They should all be implemented immediately. That's what I think.
And can I just make a note? Can please everyone take note of how we managed to talk through our differences amicably without any conflict?
Shut up, Dan. Well, yeah, it just remains for me to say it's goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me.
And it's a goodbye from me.